The Gods of Ragnarook by Emerald Lupin. Read by Emerald Lupin. It was a typical morning on board the TARDIS, for a given definition of both typical and morning. When one lived in a dimensionally transcendental craft that hurtled through all of time and space, one quickly discovered that both words were rather subjective. The Doctor and Ace were seated at opposite ends of the modest dining room table, partaking in their contrasting breakfasts: scrambled eggs, oatmeal, and tea for the former, and 3 toasted bacon sandwiches and coffee for the latter. The overall effect was a sort of dietary magnet, vegetarian at one pole and carnivore at the other. "Professor," Ace asked, still chewing on the first of her sandwiches. "Ace, how many times have I told you not to talk with your mouth full?" scolded the Doctor. Honestly, the girl could at least get that bit of etiquette down, if nothing else. "Sorry," she apologized, swallowing the now thoroughly mashed food and wiping her mouth with a napkin. "I was just wondering about what happened on Saganax." "Yes? You said that the force at the center of it all was the gods of Ragnarok, right?" The Doctor nodded. "Yes, I did. Rather nasty bunch they were, too." Her face twisted in a grimace. "Does that mean that Fenric," she spat the name like a piece of rotten fruit, "was behind that as well?" "No, actually. Completely separate agendas." He took a long sip of his Arcturan tea, his favorite blend, and quirked an eyebrow at her. "Why do you ask?" Ace shrugged. "It's obvious, isn't it? They're the gods of Ragnarok, and Millington was going on about all that Norse mythology, and Fenric was supposed to be that big wolf Fenrir, and that's all stuff with Ragnarok. So shouldn't they have known each other or something?" The Doctor smiled in sudden understanding. "A common misconception, Ace. In fact, they were not the gods of Ragnarok." "They weren't?" "No, they were the gods of Ragnarook." Ace stared at him, unblinking, for a full minute, food momentarily forgotten. "What?" "Ragnarook," the Doctor repeated, rolling his R's. Ace's silence lasted another 10 seconds before it was shattered by a groan of annoyance. "Professor, I was being serious." "So was I," replied the Doctor. "Ragnarook was a rather large planet where the gods made their first appearance. It was home to quite the thriving civilization, the jewel of their solar system, though these days it's a barren rock, thanks in part to the gods' gluttonous appetites and a cataclysmic meteor strike." He sighed. "Sad, really. From what I'd heard, the planet itself was rather lovely. Tropical climate, exotic birds with purple and pink feathers and wings 20 feet across." Ace bit into the second of her bacon sandwiches. For a moment, it looked like she was going to speak again, but the Doctor shot her a look, and she quickly washed down the food with a sip of coffee. "How'd it end up as Ragnarok, then?" "Well, once the gods had nearly tapped out Ragnarook, they began to spread out to the neighboring planets, and eventually to neighboring star systems, taking the name of Ragnarook with them to add a level of prestige to their so-called worship." "Some worship," scoffed Ace. "Feed us or we kill you. Reminds me of some of those naff old films I used to watch on TV back in Perryvale. You know, where people are sacrificed to the giant monsters some other people are worshipping, like King Kong and stuff." "Not a terrible comparison," hummed the Doctor in agreement. "Though I think those monsters were at least more honest in what they were promising, and probably didn't ask to be fed either." "Yeah, and I bet the gods of Ragnarok didn't look nearly as fake," quipped Ace. The Doctor bit back a laugh, his mind filled with the image of the malevolent trio of gods held aloft by a puppeteer's wires. "No, they certainly didn't. In any event, the gods began to spread further and further, until one day, long after the planet Ragnarook was no more, their grand messenger was sent into a new star system to plant the seeds of their treachery. He was a fanatically loyal man. He went to every major city, declaring the power and promises of his terrible masters, drawing in poor, hapless souls with his fervent zeal. By his words, each planet he visited swarmed with the cult of the gods. Warriors entered arenas to die. Writers and poets wasted away. Words lost on the winds of time. The very sparks of imagination snuffed out. But the doctor paused dramatically. But? Asked Ace with rapt attention. The gods of Ragnarook should have chosen their messenger more carefully, because for all of his loyalty, he was not a very proficient speller. Ace, who at that precise moment had chosen to take a sip of her coffee, began choking in uproarious laughter. The doctor rushed to her side of the table, gently patting her back until the spasming in her lungs passed. So, she gasped, wiping her face with a napkin to clean up the droplets of coffee that had leaked painfully out her nose. What you're saying is that he wrote the name down wrong and it, what, never got fixed? Ever? It's not quite as strange as you think, Ace, answered the doctor as he resumed his seat. In fact, the ancient Norse suffer a similar problem in your century. What do you mean? In Old Norse, the word Viking is a verb, not a noun, replied the doctor in his most teacher-like tone, the sort of tone that made Ace's nickname of Professor fit even more perfectly. It means to go on a raid. So, grammatically speaking, calling a Norseman a Viking is equivalent to calling a dancer a dancing. She considered this, propping her elbow on the table to rest her chin in her palm, in yet another casual disregard for dining etiquette. Spelling a word wrong I can get. It's right silly, but I get it. But how do you do something like that? I'm not quite sure myself, the doctor conceded. Somewhere along the way, the distinction was forgotten, and by the 21st century and beyond, the difference is so well forgotten that even spelling correction software automatically treats the word Viking not only as a noun, but a proper noun at that. What's the real noun, then? Vikinger, the doctor replied, writing it out on a napkin to show her the correct modern English spelling. Feel like I'm back in Miss Parker's English class, Ace muttered. For another minute, his companion remained silent as she went back to her breakfast. Then, with a start, she turned her attention back to him. Hold up, Professor. If you knew what their actual name was, why were you always calling them the gods of Ragnarok? The doctor smiled impishly over the rim of his mug. To annoy them, Ace. To annoy them. Author's notes. Hooray! My first entry into Doctor Who fanfiction, with more to follow, I hope. Yeah, the gods of Ragnarok were sort of poorly named, weren't they? Their entire thing of feed us with entertainment or die doesn't have any solid thematic connection to Ragnarok. Granted, a friend of mine said they at least look Norse, so that's a point in their favor, I suppose. Personally, they look more like Dr. Fate to me. Plus, because they were named the gods of Ragnarok, the writers couldn't use the word Ragnarok in The Curse of Fenric. You know, the thing that was actually working with figures from Ragnarok. The bizarreness of it all, plus my own sense of humor, resulted in this. Hope you all enjoyed it. And that is also going to be the end of this video. This was originally going to be, well, the way things were going, I recorded this the first time round before I posted any of the other readings I have posted so far. So at the time, I was thinking that this might also be the first reading that I posted online. That did not end up working out, but it was going to be at some point, and then I decided to re-record it with what I hope was slightly better audio. And I hope I did well enough on the voices. I've been trying to work on voices for Ace and Seven. I feel like I like it when people are able to do voices for characters, and I feel like it would be wrong of me to at least not try to do voices for them. I think the voice I do for Seven is pretty good. I was using the voice that Sophie Aldred does, whenever she reads Doctor Who related material. The voice that she does for Seven, I was using that as kind of an example to go by. I think I did pretty well, but the one big problem, before anybody points it out, is that I have been unable to roll my R's the way Seven does. So that's really unfortunate. I know. I just can't seem to do it. But at least I got the rest of it down. I hope. At least I hope I got it down good enough. Anyway, tell me what you guys think. Remember, if you like this video, please remember to do things like press that like button, leave a comment, consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already, or just share this with your friends on social media. Every little bit helps this channel to grow and fight the YouTube algorithm. So please consider doing that. And I'll see you guys next time with more, with more videos. Probably readings. That's what I've been doing a lot of right now. But who knows? Bye, guys.